So, welcome to this discussion on breathwork, all things breath. I'm Susannah Kenton. This is my brother, Aaron Kenton, and I'm really excited because we barely ever have spoken on video together. And I just returned from a retreat studying breathwork for a week in Costa Rica. So, breathwork is really front and center for me. But, Aaron, you have been involved in breathwork and a fan of breathwork for much longer. And I wanted to start by asking you kind of about the work that you got into around the Buteyko method and Patrick McKeown's work. What first motivated you to get involved with it?
Well, I definitely got involved with it out of pure necessity, really. I had not realized just how, as they say, dysfunctional my breath was. And I remembered actually in high school, no, primary school, doing cross-country runs. And there were always the two of us that were leading for the cross-country. And we would be together maybe until the last 500 meters, something like that. And I would notice that about three-quarters of the way through the run, I would be like, and the guy that I was with, his name was Peter. I don't even think his mouth dropped open. His breath just seemed absolutely steady and perfect and everything. And he would just take off in the last, 300-400 meters. And I would crawl over the finish line, still be second, I'd still be proud of myself and all the rest of it. But, I was, basically dying on the floor trying to catch my breath. And, he was absolutely fine. And I never really thought much about it. I just, figured, oh, that's just, what I've got to live with. That's just the way it is. And he's just better at it for some reason. And I never thought much about it, really. And I actually met a man who was teaching the method, and he was actually involved with the Kangen water systems. And he actually asked me to do the bolt score. And I was like, oh, I've no idea what this is, but we'll give it a go. And I think my bolt score was something like 7 seconds at the time. And if for anybody that knows the bolt score, they say that usually you find people in hospital at 5 seconds. So I
Wow.
wasn't exactly far off that. And now it's an exaggeration because, of course, I was not in need of hospitalization, but it did indicate that my breath was in a stressed and panicked state, and that I wasn't getting enough, there wasn't enough CO2 within the system. And so I kind of vaguely took it up at that point. Um,
Aaron,
I
can I just interrupt you for a second to explain to anyone who doesn't know what the BOLT score is? BOLT
Oh, sure.
stands for the body oxygen level test. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah.
And I'm reading this Patrick McKeown book at the moment called The Breathing Cure. And something that I find really exciting is when somebody has dysfunctional breathing and they do the BOLT score test, and I was thinking we might do it actually on this call. What he says is this: I always tell my clients that they will continue to experience asthma, nasal congestion, fatigue, anxiety, and panic attacks until their BOLT score, taken first thing in the morning, is at least 25 seconds. I think that so many people have dysfunctional breathing and they don't even know that they do. People
No,
think
they
it's
don't.
normal to breathe through the mouth, right? So
Mm.
when you first got this like rather shocking 7 BOLT score, what did you do about it?
Well, I started to work with the guy, and he gave me a technique, which I don't remember now because this was very early days. This was probably 8 years ago. But it was a case of reducing the breath. So you're making it very low and slow, breathing out, breathing in, and then you were kind of basically counting the number of seconds that it was taking to do the out breath, and it was increasing slowly. And there was a little workbook that I was keeping at the time, and I was doing it every morning and every night. And unfortunately, it only lasted for me about 2 or 3 weeks before I think I got frustrated with the lack of progress, and also I was a little bit skeptical, perhaps,
Yeah, and I think
that it was actually going to be
understandably, Aaron,
helpful.
I think it's understandable to be skeptical because we're always taught like you need to get more oxygen, you need to take deeper, fuller breaths. And so the work of Buteyko and Patrick McKeown is all about reducing like the amount of oxygen you take in and building your tolerance to withstand the buildup of carbon dioxide in the body. So it does sound a little bit backwards.
Yeah, it does, and particularly when we think about the breathing oxygen, whenever you use an oxygen blood meter, a healthy person is anywhere between 97% and 99%.
Are those
So it's
those
like,
things
well,
that you
how,
put on your finger,
yeah, little things you put on your
oxygen
finger.
sensor?
Yeah. And so how can you get more oxygen than 99%? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you? And that's the common, mistake that a lot of people make, is that no, I'm getting plenty of oxygen because I can tell. The difficulty is that oxygen molecules absolutely love hemoglobin. There's a bond that is just, a pure love bond. And without CO2 within the system, or what CO2 turns into, which is carbonic acid, then the bond doesn't become brittle. It doesn't become easily broken off, so that the oxygen can actually move into the parts of the body that are most needed. And so a lot of people just dismiss it because they're like, no, I'm getting plenty of oxygen. I know I'm breathing. And another big one, of course, is things like yoga. And it turns out that Boutenko was a yogi, but he was a yogi, it seems, at a time before breath was really brought into the yogic practice, where the principle to begin with was the control of the breath while holding these extraordinarily strong postures, but still being able to keep the breath very quiet, very in control. And that has been a big shift that has happened over the years in terms of yoga practice. So a lot of people, will constantly say, okay, make sure you're getting deep and big and breaths. And there's real power and advantage to that. But you have to also have the practice of making sure that your breath is very, very silent, very quiet. And another thing that I notice as well, speaking with people, because I didn't realize just how much of my breath I was breathing through the mouth as opposed to through the nose. And one of the big things that they say is that people that are teachers or lecturers or people that speak a great deal is that they get very, very tired at the end of the day. And it's because they don't actually have enough. They're constantly breathing through the mouth because they're talking all the time. It was interesting talking to people as well, because of the fact that I realized how much I was breathing through the mouth. Um, and then asking other people, hey, do you breathe through the mouth? And they would go, no, I don't. But as I was spending time with them, or as I was talking to them, I was noticing that their mouth was open and they were breathing through the mouth, even though they were saying, no, I'm always breathing through the nose.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how much people just aren't aware of the fact that they are doing
I
this.
think that's true. I think many,
Mm.
many people do breathe through the mouth without knowing it. And, one of the things we learned on the retreat is something you've done for a long time and known about, which is mouth taping. We were given a little bag with some goodies in it. And one of the things was some mouth tape to tape your mouth with. And, when people first hear about that, I remember when I first did it, people thought I was absolutely nuts. Leads to a much deeper, more restful sleep.
Mm.
I think one of the issues for people is for people that have a deviated septum. And I was reading in this book that up to 90% of people have issues with a deviated septum. I was like, that's an extraordinary percentage. One of the things they taught us is if you have a trouble of breathing through your nose, there's a very simple practice that you can do. I don't know if you've come across this, Aaron, but where you take a breath in through the nose, if you can, breathe out, and then pinch your nose, and then nod your head for several times. And you could do it this way, back and forth, or up and down. And you could do, of course, I'm speaking at the same time, so I'm breathing through my mouth, but you can do that sort of 4 or 5 rounds of it. And very often it will clear the sinuses. And I always say to people, like, if they want to explore mouth taping at night, to just practice in the daytime with a little piece of tape. And, people think, oh my God, you're duct taping, your whole mouth across. And of course, you're
Which the
not.
two of us do, but yeah,
I don't. I
I
don't.
don't. Oh, okay.
No, no. What I've learned is to take like a tiny piece of, what is it, surgical paper tape, and to actually put it this way,
Yeah. So that's what I suggest to people, is when they're nervous, is that they
put
do
it
just,
vertically.
yeah, because they still can breathe from the
around
sides
the
if
sides of it.
necessary.
Yeah. And what
Um,
instruction we got was like a postage size stamp, postage stamp size rather. And I think that yeah, that's the way to begin.
yeah,
But you can just
yeah. No,
try it.
I don't suggest that people do what I do, but it's just happened to work better for me, where I actually do tape the whole of my mouth at night. I
Yeah.
find with this one, I will just breathe too soon. I will start to breathe through my mouth. Um, but yeah, to do it during the day to begin with, to just get comfortable with it, because it's a terrifying idea. Well, what happens if I suddenly can't breathe through my nose, and I'm forced to breathe through my mouth, but I can't, and it's very frightening. The thing that I have noticed is the few times where I have ended up with congestion in the nose is that I will wake up in the morning, and actually somehow through the night I've actually removed the tape, so your body will not allow you to stop breathing. And that's where some people will use the myo tape, which is just a tape that will attempt to keep your mouth closed, so it just
It's
it,
like
it adds
a
some, yeah, it goes
rectangle
around the
that goes around
outside.
the mouth,
Yeah,
but it has a breathing passage in the middle,
yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah, I
So
tried
it's
that.
attempting to keep it closed, but for me, I found that it didn't work terribly well. So
I
I
found
still
the
take.
same thing, I've got to say. Aaron, I was thinking it might be fun to just do a little bolt score thing for people listening to try just to test their own score briefly. And I don't know that I'm very good at guiding this, but I had the thought either you can guide me or I can guide you. One of the things with bolt scores is people get very competitive around it. And really, it's not
I'm very
about
nervous as well.
yeah, exactly. And it's not about that. It's really just about taking the temperature of your own breath function in order that you have a base to start from, in order that you can build it through various breath practices, build your carbon dioxide tolerance, and practice breathing, as Patrick McEwen says, with a little bit of air hunger so you're not over
Mm.
breathing, so your body get used to that. So do you want to lead me in it, or would you like me to
Well,
lead
let
you?
me lead you, because
Okay.
my concern is that because we're interviewing each other, my nerves are
Yeah,
higher, and so they'll be
absolutely.
it'll
And of
be
course,
even
I
worse than it
just have
usually
such
is.
a calm
Such a
ability.
calm.
Do you have a way of counting?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. And
Yeah.
something so great. So I'll say what I'm doing. I'll do the first bit of it, and then when I shut up, which is rare for me, and pinch my nose,
Well, should we describe first what to do?
yeah. So
Yeah.
what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in and breathe out in a relaxed way, and we might do a
And it
couple.
tends to be best to do that through the nose, and it's just a normal breath. It's not an exaggerated in breath or an exaggerated out breath. It's just normal, and you can do as many as you like that are normal breaths, just until you get to the point where you feel like you're comfortable,
Yeah.
and then you're holding the out breath,
And
and then you're
holding your nose, pinching
yeah,
your
and holding your nose at the same time, and then yeah, you'll just usually have a stopwatch, and you're just going to count the number of seconds before you have the first indication that your body wants to take a breath. And this can be slight constriction in the chest, or perhaps even a swallow or a constriction here. And at that point, then you just take a normal breath in through the nose and a normal breath out through the nose. And the thing that is important to know is if your breath is not a normal breath in and out, if you feel like you're going, then you've
at the
held
end
it
of
for
the
too
hold.
long. Yeah,
Yeah.
at the end of the hold, you've held it for too long. And that's the best way. And so as you said, it's not a competitive thing. It's very much just about seeing where your body is right at this very moment. And then the nice thing is that if it is quite low score, the nice thing is that to improve it is very little effort.
Yeah.
If your bolt score is already good, to improve it is actually quite significantly, actually becomes quite challenging, because some of
And
the exercises to do it are
strenuous.
quite restrictive.
And
Mm.
I would also say that there are elite athletes that have a low Bolt score too. So it's not a sign of
Many.
being unfit or whatever else. It's just
No.
a sign of the function of your breath. And I find it very exciting that there's room for improvement for all of us.
Yeah.
So maybe what you do is just call out the 5 seconds, the 10, the 15, the 20, all the way up to the
Yeah,
80 that I'll be doing
45.
because
Yeah,
I'm an
no worries.
Olympic athlete myself. Okay, so I'll let you guide me.
Sure. Breathe in. Well, it's probably best that you just tell me when you're ready.
Oh, okay. So
Mm.
we invite you all to join us and to just
Mhm.
take a couple of easy breaths through the nose. No pressure. Of course, we know there's pressure and competition and sibling rivalry for bolt scores, but anyway.
Well, you still are considerably better than I am.
So let's see. Okay. Okay.
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45.
So I'll stop at 45. And I think that was quite honest, like I'm not huffing and
Yeah,
puffing.
you're not huffing and puffing. It may have been slight, maybe a few seconds long.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I and so I stopped because I felt like a little bit of a contraction, I suppose, in my diaphragm. When I was in Costa Rica, my at the beginning of the week, my bolt score was 20, and at the end of the week, I think it was 55. I mean, we'd been
That's
breathing
very
day in, day
impressive.
out, doing all of these different things. So it just goes to show. And your bolt score can change on the time of day. For a woman, it can change with your hormonal cycle, your stress levels, or whatever. So again, it's like it's not about being competitive, and there are people with higher bolt scores, lower scores, but it's just a way of assessing. So let's say that you found that your bolt score was so, and what they say is like a good bolt score to aim for, I think, is about well, what we were told was the goal was 45. Is that your understanding, Aaron? Or
Well,
I think
it
25
does
already
it
is quite good.
varies considerably. I would say
Sounds high to
25
me.
to 30 is ideal,
It,
unless you are wanting to be competitive
yes, yeah.
as a top athlete. Then you're looking at 45 plus.
Yeah, and the higher that can come, the more functional your breathing is. And so let's maybe look at what people can do. Do you have a favorite breath practice to improve Bolt score, for instance?
Well, I have been through an interesting stage in that yours is considerably higher than mine, despite the exercises that I have been doing to try and get it higher. And I'm not entirely sure why I'm struggling to get it higher. One of the ones that I have found to be the most effective is actually I do seem to struggle with the just got a cat that's come in with the depriving of the oxygen. So I actually use a high altitude training mask that will force the restriction for me. And I find that to be the most helpful. It is one of Patrick McEwen's masks. Um, and I will do that last thing at night for 20 minutes.
Wow, that's
And I
impressive.
find that my sleep is significantly improved because of that. But it's not pleasant, and I seem to find it harder than most people
And,
in terms of the
Aaron,
restriction.
do you count the breaths with it, or you just kind of let yourself breathe?
So I do try to count the breaths with it. Sometimes I find myself panicking in terms of just feeling like I'm not getting enough.
Yeah,
In which case, I will stop counting and I will just keep with the restriction and just try to just get myself back into a sense of feeling secure.
yeah.
And
And
that's something that's quite common apparently, and that is the thing of that whenever you do restrict, your breath, you will get to a certain point where you do go, oh my God, I need more oxygen, in which case you can break out of it, just come back to a point where you're feeling comfortable, and then you go back to the exercise.
So for people that don't have that mask, what would you suggest? Like, I know one of the practices, a very simple one that I've been using to build the carbon dioxide tolerance is just through the nose, 4 breaths in and 6 breaths out. And you do that breath cycle. I think it's called coherence breathing, and you do it for about 4 minutes. And it's funny, Aaron, because I noticed the same thing. Like, if I try to create what Patrick McEwen calls a little bit of air hunger, where you feel like you're not quite getting enough oxygen, I also have that feeling of a bit of panic. It's like my body doesn't like it, and I'll find myself
Mm.
going, like taking a really deep breath all of a sudden. So
Yeah.
it is something that I think that we have to enter into with great self-compassion and without being too competitive around it, but with a sense of excitement about what's possible, expanding
Yeah.
our breath capacity. And, for those that do suffer from anxiety or panic attacks, that kind of breath work where you lengthen the out breath by a few seconds, whether it's 4-6 or 4-8, allows you to, it sends a signal to the body to go into the parasympathetic nervous system response rather than the sympathetic one, which is all about kind of fight and flight and
Yeah.
go, go, go. And
Yeah.
I think
Whenever
all
you're
of us can do with that, more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, whenever your out breath is longer than your in, then it's sending signals to your body that things are okay, in which case it can calm itself.
Another way
Um,
I like to use that is, when I was doing it this morning I was walking to the gym, was you can do it with your footsteps. So you breathe in for 4 counts and then breathe out for 6 counts. And that's a nice way of just kind of counting the seconds.
mm,
I have a one of the Buteyko belts, which is also a useful thing. It's like a Velcro belt and it goes around, you put it around your lower ribs. I don't know which way to attach it. And it naturally gives a bit of restriction. I think this is helpful for two reasons. One is that it prevents you from taking a really deep breath, but it also, by putting pressure on your ribs, it also puts you in touch with the expansion of the ribs on the in-breath,
mm,
which is so important. And if you don't have a belt, you can just put your hands on your rib cage, on the lower ribs, and apply a pressure to them and push out against that with your breath. Funnily enough, Aaron, I've had for a long time a kind of an uncomfortable back issue. Take the belt off. And which has been on one side. And I've had, various treatments or whatever, and nothing's really cleared it up. And while I was in Costa Rica doing all this breath work, it completely disappeared. So there was inflammation down the side of my back and also in my pelvis. And what I put it down to is I actually feel like I brought some of the practices we did, brought the breath into those places where I've had an injury and where the breath, when we're injured, we tend to tighten in that area and we get
mm.
kind of inflammation and some scar tissue and stuff. I fell once when I was in college, I saw somebody had a chin up bar and I was like, oh, I'm going to hang upside down from my knees. That looks fun. Something like you might do. Jumped up, hung my knees over it, and the bar, of course, fell down and I slammed on a concrete floor onto my rib cage. And I think that injury up until very recently has been with me. So breath work has the capacity to heal all sorts of things, which I find really
Mm.
exciting.
Yeah. And that's, of course, the thing that most people don't realize is that whenever you have a significant inflammatory response within the body, then you're not getting significant amounts of oxygen into that area because the pressure itself is too much, that the blood flow is being restricted anyway. And as a consequence, you're not getting enough oxygen. So, that's where a lot of the stuff about hyperbaric oxygen comes in, or things like live O2 systems,
Oh yeah,
where
talk
you're,
about the live O2, because that's another thing you've done where you put on a mask and you breathe in oxygen while cycling or rowing, right?
yeah, yeah. So it's comparable to the hyperbaric oxygen in that, with hyperbaric oxygen, and you know more about it than I do because you have one. You are breathing oxygen, but you're under pressure, in which case it allows for, if there is an inflammatory area in the body, the additional pressure plus the breathing in the oxygen is pushing or forcing the oxygen into the areas where it's most needed that it's often not getting. And the Live O2 system works in a similar way, except that it's using your own heart as the pump to increase the amount of oxygen that's able to get into the areas of the body that are inflamed. So you're basically exercising, you're increasing your heart rate to roughly about 120 beats per minute or slightly higher, while breathing
But you got to
about
describe
70
it.
to 75% oxygen.
You got to describe it because it's a huge bag that you
It's a
fill up
yeah,
with oxygen.
it's a
Right? It takes
bag
about
full
half
of
an hour,
yeah,
and
bag
then
full of oxygen from an oxygen concentrator. And then you're wearing a mask with a hose. I mean, it's a little bit weird
not
and out of
pretty.
this world. Yeah. But they also have a way where you restrict the oxygen flow as well, so that you are really doing altitude training. So you go from high oxygen environments to low oxygen environments, and what happens is the body is having to compensate for the fact that it's like got a rush of oxygen, in which case it's going, great, we can make use of this, we can put it into the areas that are most inflamed, and then suddenly the oxygen disappears and has to compensate for it. So it's very similar to the kind of hot and cold therapy. You're stressing your body in small ways and forcing it to compensate with these extremes of high oxygen, low oxygen, cold therapy, hot therapy, cold, hot. So it is interesting. I don't know that I would, recommend it for everybody. I personally think that the hyperbaric oxygen is quite lovely because you can just relax in it. You're not having to get your heart rate up, and it's not terribly pleasant sometimes. It's
I
quite an
know
uncomfortable feeling.
it's finding that balance, isn't it, between the
It is finding that
unpleasantness and
balance,
the
yeah.
advantages?
And
Because, like, I know for me, I have experienced the benefits of cold therapy, of like ice baths and thing. In fact, in the retreat we did, we had these two huge ice baths with that could take 8 people at a time, and we had people drumming, and it was quite fun. It was like 100 people hopping into the ice bath, some of whom had never done it before, and that kind of cheering and everything. But I found coming back here, I went the other day for an ocean plunge. There are, I don't know if you know these Scarborough dippers, but there are these people, a lot of them in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And as I went there, it was like 7 a.m. on a Friday morning. Of course, it's feels like winter here now and the water's so cold. I was feeling sorry for myself going in for a dip, but I was thinking, yeah, I want to keep kind of the momentum of this cold plunging. There was a guy, Aaron, he must have been at least in his mid 70s on crutches coming up the beach having done his plunge. And I was like, oh my God, what a hero. If he
yeah,
can do it, I can do it. But I have to say, like, I'm so out of practice with the cold plunging that I have a little inflatable cold plunge in my garden. I tried it the other day. I could only do 30 seconds. I was like, yep, no, that's enough. So it's that thing of like finding the balance between using these hacks. And for me, I love the hacks that, you and I are both, have both been raised with this like Kenton legacy and this sort of passion and excitement for anything that can just elevate the experience of being a human being, lead
yeah.
to well-being and health.
A
Our mother.
childlike sense of enthusiasm, I think, is what we definitely inherited from Leslie,
Yeah.
where it's just like, oh, that seems like fun. Let's give that a go.
And
Yeah.
we've done some really freaky things, some extreme things, but also just in the interest of kind of what's possible, in consciousness. And, getting back to the breath work, like, I love that breath work can also be used to expand consciousness, very much like people use psychedelics. And I think we've both had a little bit of experience in that. Can you tell me, like, what value you've found in doing the sort of more holotropic breath work, or the breath work that leans to
Well, I've never done holotropic in its traditional form. I've done some regression therapy, which is very similar.
that, like rebirthing a little
Yeah,
bit?
rebirthing kind of
Or
stuff.
shamanic breath work is another name.
Shamanic breath work, yeah, and of course, both of us are big fans of the Wim Hof style, breathing, and both of us got to. Well, actually, no, I did. You were with Marcel Hoff. That you were helping, and the not this time round, but last time, I did it, and actually, it was the first time I'd ever passed out.
Which terrified your girlfriend,
which
right?
terrified Lucy completely. And and the irony being for me is that it was a very, very beautiful and very lovely experience. The only thing that I found difficult was having to deal with Lucy's panic. But and that is often the misunderstanding, in that, there is, passing out is not a pleasant experience, and like with anything, you want to be surrounded by people that can care and be with you, and at the same time, providing you're in a safe space, the body will self correct. It will not allow for anything to happen. So to make sure that you're in an environment that is safe. But it's very, very deep. It's very powerful. It releases a lot, often, of trapped trauma, trapped emotions. And again, it's always a choice as to how deep, you're wanting to go. At the time, I was feeling very safe. I felt in a very safe environment, and I was kind of saying to myself that I would like to go deeper, to experience, what comes next. And it was, despite the concerns around me, it was a very lovely time. And it really did feel like it released something quite deep. Now, I don't want to do it every day, or that experience, but it is powerful.
Yeah, I think
And that's
that's
the beautiful thing about the breath as well, is that, we can go for a period of time without eating, quite a long time. We can go for, a period of time without drinking, 24 hours, 48 hours, but we cannot go for more than a few minutes without breathing. And as a consequence, there are so many reward systems that are built into the way that we can choose to breathe, the way that we can shift how, as you described, the autonomic nervous system works. We can breathe in a manner that is, if we need to have some more energy, or better sense of power, then we can breathe in a way that is slightly stressing the body, because that will help to bring it up. And then we can also do the opposite of that. If we're in a stress situation, we can breathe, and it can just completely calm our entire system. I mean, one of the ones that I quite like is the box breathing, which is just it's a 4 count in, hold for 4 counts, out for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. And the four can be increased to 6 or 8, or it can even go lower. And that's the thing about breathwork, is it's not about pushing you past where you're comfortable. It's about being exactly where your body is. Similar to exercise. It's like, if you haven't exercised for a while, you don't want to run an Ironman, because that's just causing an already stressed body to really go into a state of absolute panic, like it's worried that it's not going to be able to survive. You always have to honor your body for where it's at the moment, and to stress the body in small ways. The body likes to be stressed in small ways, because it can compensate, it can learn, it can grow through that experience. But it's a delicate balance. You push it too far, and things can happen where it's just having to force itself to protect, to go into a survival state, in which case, a lot of other, health issues, kind of come from that.
yeah,
So
so
it's
well
always
said.
about finding that balance.
Yeah, and I feel, Aaron, that, intention is terribly important. So I think some people go into breath work to have kind of an experience of that's a bit out there, like somebody might choose to use a drug or something. You and I learned through shamanic healing work that we studied with our mother that the value of intention and compassion. And it's like when that is at the forefront, when you enter into a breath session, you hope that you're being held by somebody that is experienced and knows what they're doing, but also you hold yourself. And my last breath session, I had the day before the end of the workshop in Costa Rica, a friend of mine had a beautiful breakthrough in a breath practice that didn't do anything for me. I sat there and I breathed and I did everything diligently, and I was, putting it to nothing happened. I just was like, okay, that's the end of the breath session. So on the last session, it was a Wim Hof style breath work with many rounds. I was determined to really get the most out of it and get the most out of the whole really trip and experience. And I did have a very powerful experience of both healing, clearing out stuff and blockages from my body, but also a sense of expansion in consciousness, which I've had before in shamanic breath work, where this might sound strange to some people, but I had faces that appeared to me. I think I had my eyes closed, but they felt like, you know, beings from another realm that I was kind of connected with, and it felt very kind and very benevolent. I think people have all different experiences, but it's, yeah, intention is powerful, and why we choose to do a certain, you know, breathwork process is important.
Yeah, hugely. And I think it's always important to come from a state of kindness
Mm.
too many people, and I think largely it's the kind of the societal pressures upon a person, in that they feel like, you know, they have to just keep pushing, and it's like, you know, and it always unfortunately ends in disaster. I feel that one of the good examples is the cold water therapy, because it is quite a strong shock to the system, and it's always interesting to see the difference between, you know, people that will get into an ice bath or something like that, and they're, you know, shouting and screaming, and they're just like, oh yeah, no, and I'm just gonna force myself, and I got to keep going, got to make sure I get to 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, you know. And you know, they get out and their body's in a total state of panic.
Mm.
Whereas the beauty of people that you know, bring a level of consciousness to that process is that the whole idea of it is that you're, you know, getting into the cold water while, and I've even said this to people, is to basically talk to your body and basically say, um, you know, I'm going to get into cold water now, and you know, I'm doing it for the benefit. I just need you to know that there's no issue with you know, survival or anything else. I can get out at any moment. You know, there's no problems there whatsoever, and I'm just doing it for the experience. And so, you know, you get into the water and there's that 30 seconds of like, whoa, that is cold. Okay, okay. And then very quickly, you just come back to breath and, you know, just breathe through your nose, and you calm your entire system so that you're able to be present in this cold water without allowing for this fight or flight response to occur. So you're just going, just breathing very, very calmly, very gently. And then suddenly, you know, the warmth starts to come, you know, in the cold water. And all of these other benefits will come because the body is not feeling like it's having to survive.
Mm.
It's going, huh, okay, this is interesting. And then you get out, and, you know, there's a lot of people that will say when you get out, the best thing to do, even if you're feeling cold, is to stand in a kind of position of a sense of power,
Mm.
to raise your chest and raise your arms out and to stand straight, just, you know, just for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, and then wrap yourself in a towel. Because again, you're bringing that sense of your own power to the experience, and you're
You're
bringing
kind
that
of
consciousness
talking me
to it.
into it, Aaron. You're kind of talking me into getting
Well,
back.
you know, and you and me are, because I mean, I did it every day for a year, in a in a pool, a very small
Unheated
pool that
swimming
turns
pool.
out to be
Yeah.
colder than the ocean.
Wow.
Um, and
I
you know,
like
I
I
loved
like
it.
also to set an intention for going in. So it might
Yeah,
be an intention for greater freedom or healing or expansion in consciousness or whatever. Yeah.
yeah,
And I, you know, I love what you're saying, Aaron, because it reminds me also of that respect for the body, and listening to your body and speaking with your body is very much how you lead with the beautiful work that you do in supporting people with weight loss through the Kura Romana program. That it's not about punishing yourself or depriving yourself. It's about actually listening in a deeper way to what really works for your body, what your body loves, and what can bring you into that balance that is everyone's birthright.
yeah. And too many people, I think, feel that their body is somehow the enemy that they have to control or conquer. And it's such a shame, because, you know, the intelligence of us, in my opinion, has nothing to do with the you know, the brain or the mind. The intelligence comes from the entire system. It comes from the instincts. It comes from the intuition. You know, the very fact that, you know, the gut is known as the second brain because it has the second largest number of neural pathways in the body, the first being the brain itself, and it's the initial stage of communication with the brain through the vagus nerve. And but so much of the world that we live in has this kind of sense of separation where you cut yourself off at the neck, and the body has to be beaten into submission. And it's such a shame because the gifts, the power, everything comes from the body. And so to have this, I often describe it as a dance, the dance between the mind, the body, and the spirit. Because in a dance, you do not have no aspect is in control. You can't in a dance. It has to be an agreement. You want to move this way? Okay, the person chooses. Okay, do we move this way? Yes, we do. And so that is for me, the metaphor really for how we should be, is that we should allow for a dance performance to occur between the three aspects of ourselves, and then nothing can stop us. It's a beautiful experience because everything is in alignment, and as a consequence, yeah, miracles can happen, and I've seen it time and time and time again.
It's
It's a
beautiful.
beautiful thing.
I also really admire the way that you have chosen to express your physicality. So it's amazing that you're talking about dance because, of course, for a while now you've been studying tango dancing. But I also love that you are a wonderful rock climber and that you have a passion for skating, for inline skating, and all of those things. It's like you're not somebody who has chosen to punish his body in something that wasn't fun or enjoyable for you. Even like the animal flow that you practice it's just really being in sync with your body and doing what you love. That's
Yeah, and I think that's so important when it comes to any form of exercise. We again, often the mind likes to take over. It's like, okay, we need to do this, and I always, whenever anybody says I need to do something, I always think it needs to be questioned.
mm,
But
mm.
it's just not right.
That
You
comes
know,
up in your coaching of people, does it?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like I would like to, or I would love to try this. It's very different than I need to
No.
do something. And the thing with exercise is exercise should always be done for pleasure, for joy. And whatever form that takes is entirely unique to any individual and always should be. And things change. It's like, I was doing rock climbing, three times a week and absolutely loved it. And it's slightly changed. And I took up roller derby for a period of time. And I really enjoyed it. And then that changed, and and then speed skating, and you just have to listen to the joys of the body. It's like if something is no longer having the same level of pleasure or joy, and that's not to say that we can't push our bodies, because we absolutely can. But again, it's that thing of that the small stressors. There's pleasure in slightly pushing the body to see how it feels, or oh, that was tough, but it felt really good. It is wonderful, as opposed to I need to make sure that I burn 500 calories, blah 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 blah. It's a very different mentality, and of course, the body will move into a state of fight or flight with that need,
Hmm.
whereas it will remain in a very lovely balance between the fight or flight and the rest and digest when there's play involved in any form of exercise.
Aaron,
Uh,
have you been able to bring the nasal breathing into your speed skating, or is it just too intense of an activity to be able?
No, that's an interesting one, in that it was amazing how quickly I noticed that my mouth would drop open,
Mhm.
and the more I practiced, the longer I'm able to keep it closed, so that I'm only breathing through my nose. And if it's a long distance speed skate, then I am for the most part able to keep it nasal breathing, because you're not going super fast,
Mhm.
and you're not going slow. Sometimes what I will find is, with the long ones, is that I'm able to breathe through my nose, but then I will breathe out through the mouth.
Yep. Yep.
And that interesting one that I found for me is that the energy would increase when I was able to do that.
Mm.
I wouldn't get tired. It was like there was some kind of additional gear that I found, where I was just able to sustain that when I'm breathing through the nose and out through the mouth, through the nose and out through the mouth. And it made a big difference. But again, at a certain point, I find that my body starts to panic, like it's not getting enough, and then the mouth drops open, and then I have to remind myself, okay, try to go back to just breathing through the nose.
Mm.
Um,
I learned about in Costa Rica. I saw a video of a woman who is a sprinter, like a 100-meter sprinter, who breathed through the nose, and also a man who broke, and I'm sorry I don't know his name, but who broke a record for doing a marathon in under 2 hours, nasal breathing,
wow.
which is extraordinary because that's a pace like most people would run 100 meters, sprint that, whatever. It's just incredible. So very, very inspiring. But I think, for anyone listening that does any form of exercise, it's an interesting thing to try out, whether you're training at a gym or walking in the hills or whatever. Try breathing through your nose. And as Aaron said, you can breathe through your nose and out through your mouth. And if you need to breathe out in and out through your mouth, you do that for a bit as well. But the more we can guide our bodies in the direction of filtering the air through the nose first, the more we build health and well-being on all levels, because that's what
Yeah.
we're designed for.
And you increase nitric oxide, and there are all kinds of other benefits that come from that. And it also, again, it's about um, coming back to consciousness. So often, we breathe automatically. If we're not paying attention, our body will just take over. But the beautiful thing is so often is being able to make the things that we do at an unconscious level to make them conscious. Because again, a lot of gifts come from that process, where we're actually paying attention to how we live our lives, what form of exercise we're doing, how we're feeling, how we're breathing. All of these things really allow for us to be much more aware of who we are, and the kind of the magic that comes from making things conscious that normally exist on an unconscious level.
Yeah, so maybe as we wrap up, I just want to encourage people, give a plug for these couple of books which I found helpful. One is James Nestor's book,
Yeah,
which
which
is
which you introduced me to. I thought it was absolutely wonderful.
beautifully
I
researched
haven't read the Breathing
writer.
Cure.
And The
Um,
Breathing Cure is Patrick McEwen's more recent book. I think it was published
yeah,
in
haven't read
2020.
that one. I read The Oxygen Advantage, which
Yeah,
I really
which
enjoyed.
is great. And this one,
Yeah.
what I like is he gives in the beginning of it, and this appeals to me, all of the practical exercises of practicing breath work, and then he gives the research at the back. So I've been enjoying the practical exercises. And I want to say also, there are tons of resources on YouTube of Wim Hof's breath work practice that various people, including Wim, do. And they're all free and available. And you only have to look at the comments under some of those videos to see the life-changing benefits of doing a breathwork practice daily, and anyone can start to do that. I made a couple of breath tracks on my Insight Timer teacher profile. That's just I'll link to it below, but those were based on the Wim Hof breath work, one for beginners and one for intermediate. So the breath holds of those I think only go up to maybe a minute 30, something like that. So it's not super difficult for somebody that's just kind of starting out, but it's quite nice to just have a breath track to listen to. I
It's
tried
also
to,
really nice that your one is it has an energy, a kindness in the process of listening to it. Whereas I found a lot of them that are on YouTube or anything else, there's a slight kind of aggression, or push,
can be a
and
little
there's
macho in
something very
place.
nice that's just about, okay, we're just present, we're making it more of a meditative experience than we
Yeah,
are about push.
yeah.
So that's what I really liked about yours as well.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Good.
The other one that is also good is Patrick McEwen, actually, I've found, has a free app
Called
that
Oxygen
is,
Advantage. Is that the name of
I think
it?
it's the Oxygen Vantage, yeah. And it is, it goes through Bolt score, and it goes through some of the exercise of helping to increase the Bolt score. So yeah, that one's free. So, if anybody's interested, that's definitely worth just having a look at. Mhm.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate this conversation, and I hope
Yeah,
that
it's been lovely.
by sharing our enthusiasm and passion for breath work, that we might encourage other people to dip their toes in or dive in wholeheartedly. and just take in more breath, take in more life, free up their bodies to work more effectively, so that we can just all enhance well-being and live better in a world that's not so easy to feel well in, I think, these days.
Yeah, I would agree. So many wonderful gifts that are free and easy to do. All we need is ourselves.
Let's get on with it, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for the conversation. I look forward to another one soon.
Thank you. Me too.
Bye.
Bye.